True hot sports opinion on D&J. Good question. I don't know how hot the opinion is. I like those guys. You know, um, I think that they are testing a big law right now. I mean, obviously they're going for a big splash national news story. To be able to overturn all non-competes would be a huge victory, not only for them but for everyone who has non-competes, who signs contracts that have non-competes. And the way that I've seen it in their contract that was attached to their lawsuit was that 5% of their salary they were being paid. So the time that they've worked for the ticket, 5% of every year is consideration, is what they call it, for agreeing to give the company 6 months to establish their new show after you leave, uh, to not compete against the station. And then where the term compete obviously is an arguable term, right? They would argue that what they're doing does not compete against the station. The station would argue that it does. But so the idea of these non-competes, well, I'll just speak generically, right, is that 5% of what you've been paid is payment that I guess you're supposed to bank, save, and that's what you live on after your deal is done during the time that you're not supposed to compete. Now, you can go out and do other jobs, right? Just not a job that the company, like if you were out building roads or something like that, that would not count as competing, I don't think. You have to understand, I'm not a labor lawyer here. So, um, so yeah. So I don't know, what's going on with them and the company. We stay out of the loop, and I think that the judge in the case has ordered them not to talk about it. So no one's been talking about it that's involved in it directly. Oh yeah, you can never do anything in the public eye. Is that right? I haven't seen that. There's something that says you can never do something in the public eye. I guess you mean during the period of time, whatever it is, whether it's 6 months or a year or whatever people have non-competes. I don't know. You guys are in the business world. They have non-competes in y'all's businesses. It's lawyer fluff. It's not like their pay stub had a line item saying non-compete. Yeah, Troy brings up this. He's saying that it's not itemized, and he's right that it's not itemized. But what those deals are like is that even though it's not itemized, you're agreeing that 5% is that. So I mean, then he's saying it's not itemized in the paycheck, but it's itemized in the contract, I guess. But the idea is if they're illegal, like nationwide, then that's frees everybody up. I don't know why you guys are asking me about this. I am not a labor person, right? I mean, I just have the things that I've read and seen. No, that's not true, Alina. I've seen that misinformation going around saying that a law passed stating non-competes go away. That, as far as I know, that is not true. And I've noticed a lot of people say that, um, who I think in this case want them to go away. They're just saying, "Oh, those things are not enforceable, and that's just not. You can't even have them. I mean, they're completely bogus, and they're not completely bogus. Otherwise, this would have been over a long time ago, and probably would have been overturned a long time ago, even before this case came up. But there are like you can't just have some wide non-compete that is not restricted in time period, in scope, in type of business, and all that. I mean, like those would certainly be illegal. Like, you can't say that, hey, we pay you 5%, 5% of your salary goes towards you not being able to work for 20 years after this deal is done in any industry and in any state and locale. That would not be enforceable, and no one would sign that deal. No one would agree to that. Lindsay says non-competes are legal. What's that people say? Oh, people say they're not enforceable and judges don't like them, and that's not true. Yeah, I mean, it's not. I'm sure some judges don't like them, but some judges feel that they're extremely enforceable and legal. Can Robotaxi explain it to us? He's smart. Robotaxi, who sounded a lot like fake Steven, unfortunately. There's not a dill back there on the bed. One of the worst deals ever. It is a sad situation, period, yeah, because it's people that I like are crossways with each other, or at least, I don't know that they're personally crossways with each other, but business-wise they are. And then, for some reason, people feel like I think because people are just angry about a situation, they need to be angry at people. And so then it becomes, they're mad at, they're saying that they won't give Monty and Mino and Sean a chance. They're mad at Donnie or Matt, or mad at Matt, and then they're mad at Corby for not quitting. They're mad at the Musers for not going in and telling Cumulus that, hey, you have to do this. I mean, like, I've seen all these people that are just, I mean, God bless those people, because they certainly know the right way to be in the world, and they have the courage to be exactly the way that they need to be, and they know how everyone else needs to act. But I think that their solutions are very unrealistic. It's unrealistic to say that, I think it's unfair also to say that Matt and Monty and Mino and Sean don't deserve a chance because you're mad at the company, because they're enforcing what they see as a provision that's in the existing contract that these guys signed. That's unfair for Mino to have to take that on. But I get it. I mean, you're wanting to hurt a company, therefore you're willing to hurt the people that you like in order to hopefully do some damage to that company. But it seems really unfair to the people that you like and that you wanted to get this chance to be on radio, and now they do, and now you're taking it out on them. Obviously, you can tell I feel a little bit sensitive towards Monty and Mino and Sean and those guys, and I don't mean to upset you if in my defense of those guys I'm stepping on something that you feel very strongly about. I blame Cumulus, not any of y'all. I feel bad that Catman is in the middleman between Cumulus and y'all. Yeah, you know what, Cat has. Yeah, Cat. I think the Cat's gotten a horrible rap in all of this. People are saying that Catman has. It's weird in my mind. I try to square this thing that people are saying about how, oops, Cat has made the worst mistake ever, letting the hang zone go. Like, he could force them to do something that they didn't want to do. That's ridiculous in the first place. But that Cat let the hang zone go. It's the biggest mistake. The biggest mistake Cat made was breaking up the hang zone since the mistake he made when he formed the hang zone by letting Bob go to the afternoons. The man who put together the hang zone is the guy that has zero radio sense, right? The guy that felt Blake really had something and deserved to be a producer and not just a remote engineer. That guy is the guy who's never made a good radio decision in his life. That's just not true. He's made a lot of great radio decisions. He's led a station that has had tremendous success for a very long time. I understand you criticizing certain moves that he makes, whether it's um, whether it's moving a guy off of one show onto another show, or heck, you could even criticize letting the musers stay in the mornings. Let's say that you want one of the other shows in the mornings, like you think he's making a mistake there. There's lots of things you can criticize the guy about, but to say that he doesn't know anything about radio, or that he has done nothing, he's made no good radio decisions ever, that's just, I think that's an overreach. And so many of these, so much of the emotion of this situation has caused people to make these overreaching statements, these very blanket statements. It's frustrating for me to see it, to read it. I'll read about people that I think are good people. Corby. It's like, and I have to realize it's just S talking, right? It's just people S talking. But it's so hard to understand whether people believe what they're saying or whether they're just making an utterance, because they're just like talking S with their friends, or whether they actually mean what they're saying. I don't know. Here I am talking way too much, and I'll regret it, as I always do, but at least we're being real, right? We're getting real. Getting real. But, it's going to be interesting. See, the judge didn't order me not to say anything. Now, I'm sure I could hear from somebody who would say, shut the hell up. But freedom of speech, man. It is going to be interesting. They obviously, D&J took a huge risk that they're hoping pays off. And the payoff will be, that it will overturn non-competes nationwide. Hopefully, right? Because that's what we want businesses not to be able to protect themselves, or at least this is what the argument is, right? By restricting the individual's right to do what they want to do in their career. So that's the argument, right? And it's a big thing. Everybody's tired of me talking about this. Okay, I'll move on. Shut the hell up, says one guy. It's not, though. Who says it's not, though? Like, what are you referring to? It's not, though. Even if the outrage is exaggerated, there is a reason why it's causing such anger and chaos from a lot of P1s. I think there are reasons. You're exactly right. I think that two of the main reasons is there's people you like that are gone and there's change. And then I think there also has been an extreme vacuum of information out there. And so people's narratives have gotten created in this vacuum that is, I feel, inaccurate. Like there's a kernel of truth in all these little pieces, but people are kind of abstracting them and then putting together a collage that makes this such a crazy black and white situation. And to me, the situation is very interesting because it's not very black and white, because there is so much there's so much intricate argument making in all of this. That's what makes it fascinating and worth following, even if you didn't know the people involved in it. My opinion, right? The lamp has a non-compete over me. Okay, let me try to catch up. Non-competes aren't necessary. California outlawed them in the 1800s and hasn't suffered for it. Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know what the health of California corporations are or the health of the California worker is. I don't know none of the stats. But I know it's still a state and it's still in business, so it must be doing fine. Gordon, I applaud you for actually getting on the stream and talking about it. No offense, but middays are not entertaining anymore. Dude, they just started. Give them a chance. Give them a chance. These guys just started and they're going into a very difficult situation. You know, they're following some very popular shows and they got to get their legs up under them. Main reason we found out Cumulus doesn't pay the people that make the shows work behind the scene a living wage, and that's the single biggest issue. So, yeah, the issue of, and living wage means what it takes, right, to be able to live. Does it mean like the family of four thing? Like, hold on, I gotta figure out what people. I want to make sure I understand what you're saying when you say it. Okay, living wage calculator. What the hell is that? Yeah, so I think you just mean good money, right? I don't need to look up living wage and find out what you're talking about. You just mean good money. That's the single biggest issue. Do you think if you were an objective bystander, not involved with one party, I'm involved with both parties in this case, your feelings might be different? This is meant to be snarky, but tone is hard to convey. This isn't meant to be snarky, okay? Yeah, I'm involved with both sides of these people. Well, not both sides. I'm trying to omit that from my vocabulary because I know it's triggering. I'm involved with multiple sides on this issue. So I'm sure that does affect my feelings because I love these guys a whole bunch, and I also know the guys who are the management of the company, or at least the local guys, and so they're caught in the middle of this thing too. So yeah, I'm sure I would feel differently if I wasn't on the inside of it. California is where all our most dynamic tech development happens. There you go. And yeah, I'm assuming those tech companies, they don't have guys, since they don't have non-competes in California, according to somebody here said that they didn't. So all those Silicon Valley places, they don't have non-competes. So many people forget that Bob and Dan were oil and water when they first started. It took a good year or so before they finally were a good show. Yeah, I don't know how long it took them. I mean, I know it. I remember enjoying them from the beginning. They were fascinating to me. But you're right in that it did take them a while to gel into the Bob and Dan powerhouse that we know it as. And yeah, it probably did take a year. So it takes a while. Station is missing Dan. He was a real pro. Jake brought really good sports content and opinion. Yeah, Dan is. I think Dan is extremely funny and a real pro. And I thought Jake was awesome too. I don't think that anybody on our staff ever thought that those guys were anything less than what you mentioned there so flatteringly. I agree with you. I think that's also why the company did want to keep them. A lot of people are saying that the company didn't even try to keep them, and that's just not true. Mino and Sean are killing. I don't know if that means good or bad. Monty is a genius on Why Today Doesn't Suck. I guess that means good. Yeah, I mean, I think those guys are really funny. They crack me up personally. So maybe I'm biased here, but I definitely think, even if I didn't think that they were funny, which I do, I would still say, you got to give the guys a chance. They've only been on the job for a few weeks. Corky says, thank you for making appearances during the other shows. Yeah, I love being on those shows, and I'm trying to do my little part, and they asked me to come on their show. Thank goodness. I'm glad they did, because I love sitting in there and joking around with them, and Wednesdays have been really fun with Sean and Mino and Monty, because I usually go in there around 2:30 and I get to sit in on Why Today Doesn't Suck. And you guys know this because you watch me on the stream here, that how much I love Monty. I'm always bringing him on here, I think he's a very, very funny. He cracks me up. Why don't I invite Ducey on anymore? He seems upset. I would invite Ducey on tonight if I had the ability to have a guest on. Roadside Couch Lover says, I thought Hang Zone would suck, and after a few weeks, all was good. Give Matt a frickin' chance. There you go. Lindsay, Dan was making 200K plus. Everything else, Jake was making 135K plus. Explain living wage. I don't know, Lindsay. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get in over my head here. I don't know what they're saying by living. I'm assuming that is living wage, right? That passes the threshold of it. But I think what people are saying is that even if Dan's making 300 and Jake's making 200, that if their board op and producer is not making, I don't know if people are saying that they need to make that much as the show host, or let's say half of that, then it's not a living wage. If your board op and producer are making a third of that, I think what people are saying is that they want everyone to make more money, including the show host. So even if Dan's making 300, isn't Dan worth more than that? And Jake too, and all the board ops and everybody. Anytime you start getting into the finances of things, I would argue that I would love it if everyone up at the station right now made double what they made. That's the platform I'm running on. Double everyone's salary. Hate to say it, but board ops are a dime. This is not me. This is Skeeter. Dime a dozen. Some are better than others, but it's not a truly high skill set that we're. I mean, I don't think that board ops are a dime a dozen. I mean, I see what you're saying in that you can find someone to fill that role, but are they good? That's a big difference. There's serviceable board ops, and there's really, really great board ops. And I think it does make a difference in a show. Dan looks up to you a ton, Gordo. I don't think that's true, July Reds. I think Dan likes me okay. I don't know that he looks up to me or... I'm no hero to Dan, but I think we're friends. Peavy says play both sides of the guitar. Anytime I see Peavy, I'm thinking guitar. Both sides of what? What do you want me to play both sides of, and I'll do it. That's the idea, is that you want to try to make as good an argument as you can for each side and then decide the merits of each case, right? I think that's what you're asking me to do. Yes. Ryan says living wage was directed towards the behind-the-scenes people. I think you're right.
YouTube.com/@SportsGreek.
Are people seriously triggered by the term both sides now? Asked Nathan Thurm's Precarious Ash, which is a funny name. I think people are very triggered by that. So if that's become a bad term, then it's incumbent upon communicators to come up with a new way of wording it so it doesn't immediately shut someone down from considering new information or points of or rhetorical points. One of the greatest mistakes in life is thinking you can reason with emotion. That's good. I'm going to steal that. Danny left because as producer of the Hardline and basically a host, he was making less than 50. Yeah, see, I get uncomfortable talking about what people make, like actual make. Even though I have thrown around figures here in reading comments from people, including that one that I just read. Danny left. I don't know. Danny says that he had no idea or even plans of going to the station he went to when he left. That he just wanted to, do his, he just had that new kid and wanted to do the bar thing and that. But, I hope Danny is happy. And he got back in radio. What can you say? He got back in radio. And that's good for him because he's a really talented guy. I like Danny. Okay, the Andy Nick says there's a calculator that generates wage needed to live based on where you live. Nationwide I guess corporations offer more money for a position to people living in California versus here in Texas. Okay, so living wage does mean some specific thing. Like it's not. I always assumed it just was a subjective thing. It's like what that person felt like they needed in order to cover their bills. But I guess there's an objective one for each state or each city. Do I personally believe in best talent available or seniority should be the main influence on hosting decisions for any radio station? Not specifically yours. Thank you, D Pope, for making it nice and generic. And you touch upon something which is the reason that I don't want to be a manager or in management, because I think those are extremely difficult decisions. Because what do you do if you have a guy, if you have someone who's been at a place for a long time and worked their way up, should that be rewarded to the exclusion of, say that you have this guy who just comes in off the street one day and he's like really, really good? Do you not reward the guy who's been working for you for 20 years off the guy that just came off the street one day and has an incredible amount of sizzle? I think that is arguable each way, and I don't know the correct answer to it. Lindsay says some people were mad at the musers, but they were the same people that were looking for answers after 3 weeks of speculation. Yeah, people are in a vacuum, and it's almost like. And didn't I mention this recently? I mentioned the term ambient dissatisfaction. Yeah, we were talking about that guy who sang that song. But yeah, when there's ambient dissatisfaction because there's an information vacuum, people are just kind of pissed and they're getting more and more pissed and they're boiling. And it's almost like one of those little lightning balls, that you'd see at Spencer's Gifts or Brookstones or something, where you touch it and anywhere you touch it, the lightning goes to your fingertips. Comes from the center of that sphere out to your fingertips. That's what it feels like so much of this is. And people just get zapped. It's us sometimes, it's Corby other times, it's Cat a lot of times, it's the new shows, it's Cumulus. And all this does is it breeds resentment. It's not only do you see the resentment from the P1s, but the resentment from people on the inside who work at stations. Heck, when two stations even get into it, I hate seeing how people will just take. When you work at a station and you just read constant shots at yourselves or your teammates, you get resentful even when you don't have a problem with the other station across the aisle. When you have listeners that come after you, that causes you to get resentment and you have to fight against it. Meanwhile, if you talked with any of the people personally, you'd probably get along with them. But when everyone's just taking shots, and it's horrible. It's horrible to be in the middle of this. Gordon, one thing that really affects my opinion on the matter is that I feel some hosts, including you and Dan, have made good money long enough that the non-compete is not overly burdensome. For Jake, it's unlikely that 5% consideration over the past few years covers the bills for 6 months of underworking. He can go dig ditches, sure, but he is prevented from doing the one marketable career skill that he's developed as an adult unless he moves. Yeah, that's the argument, right? Is that is that maybe there should be a sliding scale for non-competes, and maybe that's what maybe. So is the argument, Andy, is that you're saying that not that non-competes are not legal and that they shouldn't happen, it's just that they need to be fair and adjusted to where they're not overly burdensome. That's a reasonable argument, yes. I see what you're saying. And yeah, and by the way, Jake can do more than just dig ditches. That guy is incredibly smart. I think he even has like a college degree or a master's degree or something. I think he's the most educated of us. But yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. You don't want to make money doing anything else. You want to do what you were doing. You just want to do it in a different venue to where hopefully you can get even more money than you were making from the previous place. And that's whether or not you're making Dan money or Jake money, right? You want to go someplace where you think you can make even more money and have more control and have a more advantageous situation. I get the why all of us are self-interested, right? We want that. And the company, too. You understand why the company's working in its best interest. And Dan and Jake are working in their best interest. And the whole lawsuit is how can we figure out what is going to be the blend of these two interests, that two sides' interest, that gets satisfied enough, but we have to compromise on some things in order to protect the things that we're most interested in. And that's what the two sides are working on, I'm assuming right now. Or the court will figure it out for them and make the decision for them if the two sides can't decide it together. All feels like marriage counseling to me. Jay Taylor says, I love Dan, but Monty is already better than Dan on Why Today Doesn't Suck. They're just different. I love them both. I can't do Sophie's Choice on those two. Mino and Sean need another hour. Yeah, that was interesting. I didn't see that coming, that you'd add 10 to 1 and then make the next show 1 to 3. I think either of those decisions are fine, no matter which show gets the extra hour. But I have to admit that I didn't think of that immediately when thinking about all these different changes and all the variables and how they would fall. Am I apprehensive about the overall health of the ticket? Seems insane that you guys would ever be worried, but so much change. Yeah. Always apprehensive about the overall health of the ticket in general, and that's even when we're considered very, very healthy. In times of tremendous change like this, you do get concerned, right? Because we're in an extremely competitive marketplace. You know, extremely competitive marketplace. And we're battling for people's attention. So you want people to listen to your product, and when all of a sudden you're introducing a new product in the form of 2 new shows, it's a very precarious time, and you want the launch of those shows to go well, and you want people to give them a chance. And you particularly want it when you really like the guys involved, as I do. Do I go to the station multiple times a day for these other shows, or do I stay there? I have stayed there a few times, but most often I will go run errands or go home and then come back. So it's been a lot of driving. Why do I hate Ducey so much? You know I don't hate Ducey. I love that man to death. I think he is hilarious. And I love the natural tension that we play on the air. Checked Goat asks again something that we had talked about a little bit earlier. How does this show not violate a non-compete, but Dan and Jake does? The short answer to that is that's not my... I don't have to answer that question. Now, I'm not talking about to you. I'm saying that that the company would have to make an argument that this violates my non-compete. I know what I would say to the company if they came to me and said, "Hey, you need to not do your Twitch stream because it's a violation of your non-compete." My argument to the company would be this. I would say, I think that you're wrong, and let me explain why. I'm not doing the same show that I do 5:30 to 10 a.m. Most notably, I don't have the same personnel. I'm doing a solo show that in no way is the show some knockoff of the Musers. It's just me by myself. I'm not talking about sports. You're in the business of a sports radio station that talks also about life. And if you listen to my Twitch stream, you know how extremely non-sportsy it is. So that's a difference as well. Personnel difference, subject matter difference. In no way is anyone going to be confusing this Twitch stream with my morning show that I'm on with those two other guys. And I've been very careful to do it outside of your radio station's primetime hours. So you can't conceivably say that I'm causing people to tune away from Mino and Monty and Sean or Corby and Dave and Bob to tune into my Twitch stream. I also don't offer VODs. I would tell the station I don't do VODs to where people who may have missed it the night before, maybe they're going to catch up on it the next day during Mino's new show or Corby and Dave and Bob. So I'm being very careful to make sure that in all these key areas that it's not competing with your radio station. That's what I would tell them if they asked me. Now, whether or not they would, that's convincing to them, I don't know. But maybe they already think this. You know, maybe they're not worried about it because they know that I'm not all that compelling. Amen says, so tired of the D&J talk, who cares? Go to the freak already. Yeah, some people are speculating that this was the play all along. These are the really cynical conspiracy theorists. The P1s who are really cynical say that, yeah, the play was to basically trigger a, if not a lawsuit, at least a cease and desist. So you get the Streisand effect. You raise awareness for a podcast business venture that is supposed to be temporary money until you can just go to another terrestrial radio station. But I don't think those guys would do that. Like, I don't think that they would risk saying, you know, that, I mean, their whole position is that podcasting is the future and terrestrial radio is the way of the past, and this is not what we're wanting to do. We're wanting to do these other creative ventures that we have full control over and don't have to answer to anyone or split profits with anyone, and then to turn around and just the whole thing be about going to another old school radio station. That's not very skateboard man-y, and I don't think that that's, I mean, I don't know anything one way or the other, but I think that that's very, very unlikely. Concerned about the bleeding of the farm system the last few years. Yeah, I hated seeing Blake leaving. I hated seeing Blake leaving too. I thought Blake was really talented. I know when I did a few of those one-off, I say it was one-off, I did a few of them, nighttime Thursday night shows, you know, Blake was always my choice to produce those. I like Blake's vibe and his sense of humor. Says, I love the stream and appreciate the challenge you're facing with these questions. Yeah, hey, this is absolutely stupid for me to address any of this stuff. I mean, because all it does is just, I don't, you know, it's like I'm not one of the principal guys in this, And I know that those guys can't talk right now. They're the ones who should be addressing this. But as they're trying in good faith, those two sides are trying in good faith to work it out and to come to some sort of resolution. They can't talk about it, and it seems completely unwise for me to talk about it. Somehow it came up tonight, and I think that it's done. I understand why people aren't talking about it, but I think it's done a disservice to the P1s to not have any sort of what I feel is more accurate information, and not to allow the vacuum of information to just create these horrible monsters that seems to have grown up to where it's people saying, F the ticket. The ticket's the worst piece of crap station ever. And it's like, this is the same station minus two guys who are very huge guys. And also Blake. I'm not discounting some of the other guys that have lost, but we still have a lot of the same people, and we're still really, really trying. We haven't closed up shop here. Gordo is doing nothing like... Oh, this is Lindsay again. Nothing like his morning show. Dan and Jake were hosts. Same format, same lingo. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's obviously more of a gray area. That's why there's a lawsuit around that right now. I don't think that Dan and Jake's lawyers were surprised that there was a lawsuit. I think that they probably wanted a lawsuit, right? I mean, they didn't want it for their guys to have to go through the discomfort of it, but I think they wanted to at least get some clarity on these labor issues, and they felt this was a good case to do it with. So yeah, I think that they knew that there was a very strong possibility that podcast would be seen as compete. Well, I mean, even one of the guys, I guess Jake, had it in his deal, right? The term podcasting was part of his non-compete. Now, his lawyers will argue that's just, even though it's said in there that non-competes in general are not, it doesn't matter what a non-compete says in it, it's just not legal. No non-compete is legal, no matter if it mentions podcasting by name, or even if it mentioned the exact name of the podcast, even if it spelled out everything that Jake has done after his employment, it doesn't matter, because non-competes are BS. It's what I would think that they would argue. And we'll see. I think that they have a really interesting and novel argument for it. And I don't understand it all. I've just gone by what I've read in the court documents. It's kind of this interesting preemptive end around that this is like, it's not even about the court system. Certainly the federal court system it's not even their jurisdiction to rule in this. This is a National Labor Relations Board issue. It's a really interesting argument, and it's going to be interesting to see what the court feels about that. It could be extremely precedent setting. Wish you'd answer if you might bring back awkward interviews like you mentioned on the Hardline. I'd love to bring those back. I think I'm ready to do those again. I got to find a TV outlet that's willing to do it, or maybe that's me thinking a very okay boomer that I should do them for TV. I mean, maybe now it's just as easy to get on these junket circuits by saying, hey, look, I've got a Twitch stream. I don't need to have a network affiliated top 5 market TV station in my family crest. I don't know, but I do kind of think old school, and I think, man, I need to get one of these local TV stations to vouch for me where I can get on the junket circuit. But that may be unnecessary now, truly. Talking money is a no-win situation. If someone agrees to the job terms, that's the way it is. Yes and no, Mark Win 22. I mean, there are some other labor issues that are important, right? I mean, if you sign a contract that is so lopsided in one side's favor, that doesn't seem right to me. It's like that's worth opening back up again and talking about, well, is this fair? Now, legally, I'm sure there's a big argument of, hey, if you signed it, you agreed to it. I know that that's going to be the argument in court, but there is a bigger philosophical issue of what does a more fair and just world look like, and does it include lopsided contracts? Do they pay you extra for being on every show on the ticket? Carrying the station on your back. That's ridiculous. There is no way I'm carrying this station on my back. The station has carried me for many, many years. I have no illusions or delusions about what this station has meant to my life. And I know that I am not bigger than this team that I'm surrounded by. And always be wary of any agent that comes along and starts being a silver-tongued devil in your ear, saying that you're the one, man. You could leave all your teammates behind, and these people are nothing without you. And we are all a product of an extremely, extremely talented team. Anyway, that's my comment on carrying the station on your back. Do they pay me extra for being on every show on the ticket? No. I don't see one extra dime for any of that. And maybe I should start thinking that way. Maybe I should start thinking more. But I just did it because I thought that it was good for the station. I thought it was good for the other shows, and I knew it was good for me. I think it's good for me to be on those other shows. I like being on those other shows. I get a charge out of it spiritually, just being around the guys. That way I'm not so cloistered and go home after the morning show. It gets me back up at the workplace. That's one thing I really miss about the early days of the ticket, is how much time we spent hanging around up at the workplace, joking around with each other. And so this being on other people's shows really given me a good excuse to be around the other guys. You know how it is. You get older, you get a life, and you start spending time at home rather than staying up at the station like we did when we were in our early 20s and mid 20s, when we used to hang around at work all day. And I understand why life goes in that direction, but still, it's great to hang with those really talented, funny people that you get to call coworkers, and that's why road trips have always been so fun. So I've really enjoyed going up on the other shows. I've received no extra money for it, and it never even occurred to me to ask for any money or compensation for it. You know, I guess part of me has not fully switched over to more of the hustle culture. And this is one of the issues that I think that Dan and Jake and this whole situation has brought up, is this idea of hustle culture. Like, I understand the upside of it, and people talk about the upside of it. It's great to be your own boss. It's great to make a lot more money and be your own boss if you get something that is a big hit, and people really want a part of it. And maybe this is my old school thinking, to me there's also a downside to it. When everybody is now an Uber Eats driver and everybody uses their own car to, participate in the gig economy, and now we're moving that way in our media as well, with everybody having their own podcast, or even this Twitch stream is a part of that kind of hustle culture, to where you have your own thing, and it's kind of neat because there's this direct relationship you have with the people who consume you. Right? They fund your business, and you are a business of one or two, or, you're your own boss, your own CEO. And that's the upside to it. The downside is that you have to hustle. And your whole life, all these influencers that we make fun of and we envy and we poke fun at, it's the ones who are really successful work their asses off, and it's never ending because you're only as good as your last metric, and you're constantly chasing those numbers. And I think it burns people out, and I think that part of it is not good for your soul or your psyche. So there is a downside to hustle culture in the same way there's an upside to it. The downside is it's eternal. You stay on that hamster wheel and you got to keep it running in order to keep it going. Being successful, you got to keep going and keep going and keep. And have you done your 2 quality tweets today? Have you done your SpawnCon today? Have you hit this platform? Have you made sure you did your Instagram as well as your promote your kick? And I mean, it's like to scientize all that and to make it a flowing business is just a lot of work. And then part of me thinks, isn't this, in a way, it's great that people are bypassing corporations for their livelihood, but maybe that's not what society needs. Maybe society needs also better corporations. Maybe forcing everyone into the hustle economy maybe it's not a sign of health as it is much a sign of sickness, if that makes sense. And by the way, none of this is like conclusions I've come to. These are just thoughts that I have as I try to think through, well, what is best? Is it best that we all have to become our own bosses and CEOs? And I mean, is that good if we're in a world of 8 billion CEOs who are all trying to hustle for the attention of all the other CEOs to come watch my OnlyFans, and then I'll watch your OnlyFans, and then we'll pay each other to be each other's content creators? And I don't know. It seems tiring, and it seems like it's... Hold on, let me read some more of this chat. Lindsay from South Carolina, me Googling hustle culture. I'm not sure hustle culture is a word, Lindsay. It probably is. I probably heard it somewhere. But you know what I'm talking about. Just that culture where you're always hustling. You're just living from gig to gig, right? Or you're living for, having people pay you directly to dance for them. You know what I'm talking about? Dan and culture didn't want to be hustle culture bros. They wanted to keep working at the ticket, but management wouldn't pay their support staff. Unlike you, they stand up for their guys. Jason, I think that you're wrong there. The idea that they left because management wouldn't pay their support staff is just not true. And I know that's not going to go over well with you, and you're going to attack me for 50 million different things, right? And I'm an easy target, so you'll have no problem with that. But that's just a willful misreading of the situation. And I know you because I know you're a smart guy, and I know that you know that that is an oversimplified... It's not even oversimplified, it's actually just wrong. That they wanted to sign, right? They were all ready to sign, but management refused to pay their support staff anymore, and so they left. That's what you think the story was. We should get Jason on here to explain it. He says, unlike me, they stand up for their guys. All right. Let's see what else we got. That's Jason's take. I'll try to get more from Jason here. Jason Aldean. I don't think it's Jason Aldean. No, Jason's a good guy. He's a good P1. He's listened to us for years and years. He's a good guy. I think he has a very compassionate heart and a very open heart, and that's good. Ace says Gordon lobbied management to reduce his staff's pay. You know what? I would not doubt that that's one of the rumors that is out there, or that someone would say that for real. Like, I watch people almost get radicalized in real time sometimes when I'm reading comments. Like, a guy will say one thing that's about half of what you said. And then the next comment I see him make says what you said. Like I see him work himself into that position when he didn't get a big enough hit from the first one. Um, you told Soroy you didn't even know Big Strong Jill was underpaid. I thought I said I didn't know what Big Strong Jill was paid. And that I didn't, I was very ignorant of this situation. Like I had heard Jill make jokes the same way that I hear, and I always put them in this category of the same way that George makes jokes about his love life or something like that. Like I thought it was this funny joke. I knew that Big Strong Jill wasn't paid as much as George Dunham. But I honestly do not know, and still do not know what Jill has made. And some people just found that just crazy. Oh, that was Jason again who said that. Yeah, some people, and Jason's probably one of them, just thinks that it's insane that I would dare to even claim that I didn't know what Jill made. And probably thinks it's even crazier now that I'm claiming that I still don't know what Jill made. But I do know that Jill did not make show host money. So I do have some idea. But yeah, I think that you could make the argument, Jason, and I think you and I would find common ground on this, that, as I said, everyone at the station is probably underpaid. In one sense, we're underpaid, every single one of us, Jill included. So we find common ground on that. And then I also know that there's some people who would come through and say that every one of us are overpaid. I see it all the time. People make comments. I can't believe you guys would make even $50,000 for just sitting in one chair and talking into a microphone all day. I can't believe you would even make $100,000. No one should make $100,000 for sitting in a chair talking into a microphone. Much less this reported figure that you guys are putting in there about Dan making 300 or something. You know, like that is just, that would be underpaid or overpaid. That would probably drive you crazy, Jason, that I could see both sides of that argument, that we're all overpaid and we're all underpaid. But I think you can make each of those arguments. But yeah. Let's get more. I'm going to be tired tomorrow. Why? What time is it? I don't even know what time it is. Oh, it's 9:30 already for me to hop off of here. Weather CS says, you just don't like the contract because you didn't write it. That's funny. I enjoy that. Gordon, we aren't that dumb to think you had no idea, at least the ballpark. Yeah, I told you. I do have some idea, because I know that, here's one idea, it's not as much as a show host, right? But beyond that, if it's anywhere from 20 to 80, I mean, we've got to play. I've got to sit here and dance for you and play guess this person's salary. Because why? Because you want to stand there and get upset with me if I don't get it right. If I say 90, are you going to get mad at me? If I say 20, are you going to get mad at me? If I said 50, would you get mad at me? Like, where are you going with it? If it seems like no matter what I'm saying is just going to cause someone to be angry, because they're angry at a world in which everyone doesn't make the same or even close to the same in the same building. Maybe that's what it's about. C-suite guys make a certain amount and board ops and remote engineers make a different amount. Yeah, I don't know. What's a more fair world? Being overpaid, underpaid, you don't know unless you're one of the parties. Well, the thing is, being one of the parties, I think we all think we're underpaid. Right? Shouldn't we think that? I mean, I'll tell you this. This is a personal note for me. And so I will be attacked on this. And it's a no-win situation for me. But I'll go into it. And I have always felt I've worked at the same job. I've had the same job description, I guess, since I started at this station. I mean, except, okay, let me clarify and be more specific, because I get really bummed when people are talking very loosely and things get misinterpreted. So my current job really, I guess, started when we moved to the morning show. So that would have been 96. Okay, so outside of the first couple years of the ticket. I think that the first year that I was doing the morning show, I was probably making in the teens. Probably low teens. I'd have to go back and look. But let's say 15. And I remember thinking, and then it went up from there, obviously. I'm not still making 15. But every step of the way, me personally, I've always felt that I could not believe I was getting money for doing what I do. Because in so many ways, I knew people that worked really, really hard at getting a law degree, and I watched people that worked really, really hard building houses. You guys know my affinity for men who can frame a house, and I've seen guys who dig ditches, and I admire those people who know how to do things and know how to actually route a ditch and know something about the kind of ground that they're digging up. It's not just this mindless physical labor. And I've always felt that I couldn't believe I was making what I was making for doing what I was doing. And that goes all the way back to when I was making $15,000 a year. Now, at the same time, you talk to me from another way, right? I talk to myself another way, and I think, okay, if a company is making this much money, doesn't the product deserve a good portion of that money? So in other words, do I actually earn the money that I make? Part of me says no. I just go on the air and I make jokes for a living and I talk. That should not be the thing that's valued so much in this world that I would get paid for it. So I have that feeling personally. But I also have this other feeling of, but since we do live in a world that will pay someone to talk, shouldn't the people who do the talking make the money? And I think, well, yeah. So that's my conclusion, which probably is not satisfactory to any of you guys, which is that I'm both underpaid and overpaid. How many weeks have we had this conversation? A lot, and too many. And at some point, I think people will say, you know what? Let's just go back to listen to the radio and listen to whatever it is. If you like listen to podcasts or radio and everything, and we don't have to do the whole drama thing. We don't have to make this, everything has got to be about, oh, did you hear the latest tea that was spilled? And, hey, they're talking about it. Hey, get this, they're talking about it. I get there's natural curiosity to something, but does anybody ever feel icky that it's just like this drama that just keeps dragging on? And this is Gordo playing both sides regarding his own salary. That's exactly right, man. I feel both ways about it. I feel like, heck, even, okay, look at Kristen Bell. Does she deserve $20 million a picture? I don't even know how much she makes. And first of all, calling it a picture sounds very old-fashioned. But does she deserve $20 million to star in a movie? Well, doesn't part of you go, no, that's ridiculous. That is so much money that goes to this one person to star in a movie. Think about all the people that are full of wants and needs, and there are people living below the poverty level. And we live in a culture in which pay someone $20 million to star in a movie? So I guarantee you part of you thinks that actress, whether I shouldn't have used Kristen because we like her, right? Julia Roberts. We'll use her. We shouldn't live in a world in which she makes $20 million a picture. But doesn't the other part of you goes, yeah, but so I would rather Julia make only $1 million, and then I'd much rather that extra $19 million to go to the studio, to go to the company that makes it, right? Is that the way you feel? Or would you say, well, no, because no one in that company could open a movie as big as Julia Roberts and actually recoup that cost the way she can. So she actually is, quote unquote, earning that money because she has a special skill that very, very few people have. So who do we want to get it? There's the $20 million. Who deserves to get it? The studio's got to make some of that money, right? They are the ones who are financing. Julia Roberts is not financing the picture. Julia Roberts is not the one paying all the camera guys and the marketing and doing the big campaign. And she hasn't set up all that infrastructure. They have. So they obviously deserve to make a good bit of money off of it too. But Julia deserves a huge portion of that too, right? She deserves at least that $20 million. They wouldn't be paying her $20 million if they didn't think that they could make more than $20 million off of her. So it seems like they're entering into this agreement with her, believing that she's worth that money. And she sees their value too, right? Because she's saying yes to the money. She wants that $20 million, and she's okay with them making $80 million. But yes, if you narrow down and just pinpoint focus on any part of that whole equation, I can see you getting annoyed. I would get annoyed. If you zero in and say, does Julia Roberts really need to make $20 million? Does any human need to make $20 million? Yeah, you can get yourself worked up. You can also get yourself worked up to say she's only making $20 million and they made $800 million off of it. That's incredibly unfair. That's a company that's taking advantage of its labor, and that's forced. Yeah, you can get worked up about that too. I'll tell you another thing that you could get worked up about. Julia Roberts made that $20 million, and usually, you know how much the camera guy made that had the camera on her? It wasn't $20 million, and then you can get worked up about that. If you take any one piece of that, all of it is stuff that just makes you angry. Yes, I know. I'm beating you down as much as I'm beating myself down on this. Somebody's being unkind to Julia Roberts in the chat here. Yeah. She has at least 2 special skills. I don't know what that means. Yes, the support staff that helped make that movie successful deserves to be paid. I agree with you. Yeah. They should not, they certainly shouldn't, you and I agree that they should be paid.
YouTube.com/@SportsGreek.
How much money does the best boy make? I don't know, but I guarantee if you found out, you would be upset. I think you would be upset. I don't know. Maybe you would say, well, I have no personal investment in that, so I don't care. Do I think the CEO of Cumulus deserves $5.5 million? I have no idea because I really don't know the finances of this company. That's another good one. So she's the Julia Roberts in this scenario in our little ridiculous metaphor that we're using. Is it a metaphor? I don't know what this is. So let's say that she's a CEO, and this could be any company, right? Should a CEO make $10 million a year? And if I don't know how much the company made, or did that CEO turn around the company, or did that company have to get in a bidding war for that CEO? That was the best one. There's a lot of factors that go into how much someone makes. And you bring up and that was Ava Jane brings this up. It's a great question because we don't have enough information in your one question. Does a CEO deserve to make $5.5 million? How much is the company worth? How much is it? Is it turned around from the year before? Was she in a bidding war? Were they in a bidding war to get this CEO over another one? All those things factor into it. It's the exact same thing as that movie example to me, unless, I mean, I'm willing to listen to a reason why it's completely dissimilar to the movie example. But is someone worth $5.5 million if they make the company $100 million? You would probably say yes. If not, then the company, and I'm not talking about Cumulus, right? We're talking about generic company here, because I don't want to step on anybody's toes or talk about this company, and you guys could start bringing up stuff about this company that I don't know, right? But if you just take it without context, I'm saying we don't have enough context to know whether someone deserves the money that they are paid. But, I mean, look, I'm not going to win any friends by defending corporations or defending anyone's salary. You guys are all overpaid, right? Or underpaid. Either one. Whatever you feel like you are. Does anyone feel like they're overpaid? Most people aren't. Most people always feel like they're underpaid. This is so dumb. If the supposed talent isn't making enough, then that's a market inefficiency that can be taken advantage of. I don't know what that means. Like, for some reason, I get a little lost when people start talking like market inefficiencies and things like that. I don't know what those terms really mean. I've actually thought about going to business school because I've always wanted to understand business, and I really don't. Like, I'm a really not good with all that. I don't understand EBITDA. I don't even know if you just say it like that. Earnings before taxes and something? Yeah, so Jay Taylor says, let's do an experiment. Remove a best boy from a movie and remove Julia Roberts from the same movie. Which one has the biggest impact on the bottom line? Both should be paid based on their worth to the project. Well, I mean, I think you would agree, though, that both are important, right? I mean, you have to have best boys and grips and dolly operators, and all those things are important. You know, you can't just eliminate those positions. You have to be able to pay those people whatever it takes for them to do their job, right? Oh, I see what you're saying. Both should be paid based on their worth to the project. Yeah, that's the problem. That's the part that makes me not want to be in management or in a budgetary situation. You know, when you have to decide that someone's work is worth more to the overall bottom line than another person's work, and then you pay them according to that, that's just tense. That's too tense. That's not a situation I'd want to be in. Someone from Cumulus Corporate is about to walk in and trank dart Gordo. He said too much. Boy, you're telling the truth. As your non-lawyer, I advise you to ignore all comments related to company and lawsuits. I know. Lindsay asked, how much are you worth to the company? Me, personally? I don't know. I guess one way of answering that is whatever I get paid. Obviously, that's what the company feels I'm worth. Or maybe I'm underpaid. Maybe they would pay me more. But I do know that historically we've certainly needed each other. Me and the company, right? It was a good relationship. And isn't that that's the idea, right? You want the other side to do well, and you want to do well. And you don't want the company taking advantage of you, and you don't want to be taking advantage of the company. You want them both to keep the relationship going, right? Who owns 840 characters? That's a good question. I think I do. But I'd have to look. Okay, so it's very dangerous for me to presume that you're talking to me in this because because it sounds very cocky if you number one asset, yeah, you must be talking to me. But let's take this as if you were talking to me. The ticket is one of Cumulus's crown jewels, I think. I don't know whether that's just me thinking that because I work at the station, but I do know that the ticket is very important to Cumulus. It's a station that has performed extremely well for them, and it's very important to them. So I think that I am an asset to that station. I'm not going to pretend like I'm not. I've been there for a long time, and that kind of longevity banks a lot of goodwill with the listening public. People, you're someone that the station, that the P1s know, and they will tune in for you. Or otherwise, you wouldn't stay there so many years. You couldn't get away with being there so long if they didn't feel like you were a valuable asset. Now, why you're pointing that out, I didn't see what you said before that. So I'm not sure what that's connecting to some other thing. So I don't know where I was going with that. So I apologize. I have failed, and I will leave you alone. Cole says, I used to work for a rival station, and another host said they'd give anything to have Gordon on their show. That's very, very nice if someone said that about me. Particularly from some other station. It's very flattering, and that makes me feel good. I know it shouldn't make me feel good, because you should always cut compliments. You need to don't get too excited by them, because then you'll also tend to get equally hurt by negative comments. So I take it with a grain of salt, but it is very nice to hear that. Somebody says, but they sue your friends. I'm assuming you're talking about the company, right? Yeah, Dan and Jake are my friends, but I mean, it's not one of these things like I just have to, now I need to hate everyone that works for Cumulus who's not me or who's not Dan and Jake because they're being sued by the company. I mean, there's lawyers in this that are from high up in the company. And so I'm going to turn around and I'm going to hate Kat and Dan Bennett because the company is suing Dan and Jake because the company feels like they are violating the agreement that they entered into with the company. If they don't have a claim, I think the court's going to figure this out really quickly. If the company has no right and no legal basis to think that that Dan and Jake are violating their contract. I mean, heck, if Dan and Jake felt like the company was not paying them their money and they sued the company, I would totally understand that. And I would still talk to Dan Bennett and Jeff Catlin and Jake and Dan. And so many people want to make this to where they, as listeners, they want to say that if we don't disavow our friends, who I count Jeff Catlin as a friend, who has been there in thick and thin and been there in the bunker with all of us as the ticket has tried its very best to take this station and make it into what it was made into, that I've got to hate that guy, because the company feels like there's a contract that they want to enforce. And I'm sure, I guarantee you, the company is worried that, hey, if we don't enforce these contracts and non-competes, then what's the value of having these contracts? If we don't enforce the restrictions that we feel are right, then why do we have the contract? That's with the company's point of view, right? Now, courts are going to decide whether that is a legit view or not, whether these restrictions are legal or not. And that's why I was saying, Dan and Jake had this very interesting and legal argument that non-competes, are just, it's not good for culture, and that the national, whatever that NRLRBQA group, that they seem to be turning and saying that, hey, non-competes are not good, and we need to do away with them. Okay. Non-competes don't work in Texas. Mushroom Party, I think that's just not true. The way I understand it, it is not true. Now, you may know more than I do in it. I hear that thrown out, like people just say non-competes are unenforceable. And I'm like, wait, there seems like there needs to be more explanation than that. Because non-competes have been very enforceable as long as they fall within strict parameters. Overly broad non-competes are not enforceable. But then the question is, what does the non-compete have to look like in order for it to be overly broad? And that's where you get into disagreements between different parties, and they have to take it to court. But to say a blanket statement that non-competes just don't work in Texas, I don't know what you mean by that. I should countersue for emotional distress. You're right. This caused me nothing but emotional stress. Would you guys side with me if I sued Dan and Jake and Catlin and Bennett and Cumulus Corporate? Would you guys support me if I sued them for emotional distress? Yeah, Amberger says, I just hate that I feel like I can't enjoy the new shows and bummed about what happened. There's a divisive atmosphere and I hope it gets resolved. Yeah, what's weird, Ambergers, I totally hear what you're saying on that. And I agree with you. I hate that there's this feeling, right? This divisive atmosphere and feeling, and you hope it gets resolved. But I also have to say, that feels like it exists more, to a greater degree, in the listenership than it does even in the principal players. Like, I think that as stressful as it is, which it is extremely stressful, I mean, I think that Dan and Jake are extremely stressed about this, as well they should be, because it's a lawsuit, and I guarantee you they've gone through nothing like this before. I know that that Kat and Dan Bennett have had their time taken up with this, and they're extremely stressed about this. It has been stressful for everyone. It's been stressful for us because we see the way that the P1s are getting real worked up about it, and we see a lot of misinformation about it out there. And it sucks to have people hate you for what feels like a misreading of the situation. But it doesn't have to be that way, because I think that the people personally, like in court, like if you found out that, hey, Jeff Catlin and Jake, they're shaking hands. Let's say you found out they hugged in court when they saw each other, when they met that whatever day that was. Like, those are guys who are, we're supposed to hate one or both of them, depending on which side you're on, or whether you're just sick of the whole situation, right? Because they couldn't work it out. But yet they are okay with each other. I think that the actual people involved in this are not as divided and divisive as the P1s seem to be fighting over this. Those sides know that there is a legal matter that has to be resolved through these legal courts, and I'm sure each side feels that they are the ones who are going to prevail, because that's why they're even involved in this. That's why they started the whole process, because they felt that they were in the right. whether it's Dan and Jake starting the podcast or Cumulus starting the lawsuit. They feel like they're in the right. The courts will decide that. But in the meantime, the P1s and show host and even the parties involved in the lawsuit don't have to be personally divided. Maybe this is my ridiculous pie in the sky thinking, but I certainly have not seen it with the principal players involved acting that way towards each other. But I do see it in P1s interacting online with each other in a very divided way that even the principal characters are not acting like. So yeah, let me see if there's anything else that I want to address in all this, because I probably won't address it again because it's just too tiresome. And I think you guys now are probably seeing, you were like, man, why won't somebody address it? And then when I do address it, then you're like, yeah, now I kind of see why nobody addresses it, because it's just too draining to even listen to it. I was hoping Jason was still here, because I do want to hear what Jason has to say, and he's a good one to talk to. The court documents about that. I'm not sure what that is here. Ava Jean, I'm sorry. Got specific about pay, or what I think people are rightfully most angry about. Yeah, I know that Jake put his salary in there, that he was making base. I think he was making 80, was it? And then he was making base 135 or 150. So, and then there was mention that Ham was making, was it 27 or 30? And that's what people are mad about. I think they're mad because Jake was making whatever it was. Did it say 150, or did it have his extras in there as well? Or was it 135 and then with the extras it was whatever, 180? I don't know. I don't know the figures that were in the court documents, but whatever those were, you're saying that's what people got upset about. And yes, yeah, people are probably looking at the figures going, that's unfair for a midday host. I don't know that people are thinking that what Dan was paid was unfair for a midday host. I haven't seen that yet, but I'm not discounting that people are saying that. I think that what people are most upset about is seeing that whoever salary was mentioned, Ham or DJ's salary, that's what people are upset about. I think that's what you're referring to, Ava Jean, is that's just not enough money for a board operator, and they want them to get paid more. I think that's what you're saying, or maybe it was all of those figures. I don't know, but certainly the lowest ones. Radio pays awful and always has. That was said by somebody. Ava Jean says, yes, sir, love you, and thank you. Was that to me or is that to somebody else? It was good. I was hoping it was to me, but I don't know. What is more, Lindsay asked. Yeah, you want, that's the thing. They took away Blake's pay bump and he left. Smart decision. I hadn't heard this. So wait, Blake got a pay bump and then they took it away? Is there not more to the story? Die Monster, who said that, could you put in the comments what happened there? Because I haven't heard this. So Blake got a pay raise, and then after a while they just took it away? Ace Champion said they tried to get Blake's kids taken away. What? Oh, hey, is that the Monty? I don't know if that's real Monty or not. Justin 25. Is that Monty's name? For some reason, the 25 is not causing recognition with me. Can't span. It's in the filing, says fake Bobby Turner. Lindsay says it can be argued people make too much, too little. It all depends on the industry and the scarcity of job talent. Okay, Spunk says once Hang Zone left, they took away the support staff raises. So I have a few questions about this because I hadn't heard that they gave people raises and then took them away. Are you talking about that these were actual raises that the people got, or was this part of a negotiation about a contract that was never signed? Does anyone know the answer to that? Like, were they just negotiating this as part of their deal that they then chose not to sign? But they wanted Cumulus to follow through on the negotiated points? Is that what you're saying? Or are you saying that they did, that Cumulus gave people raises, and then, whatever, a couple months later when Dan and Jake left, they then stripped people of raises? I haven't heard this story, so you're going to have to help me. They actually gave the raise to Dutch instead of Blake. Lucid. I think that's a very sarcastic comment. This says Dan and Jake tried to negotiate people's pay. The next claim was that Cumulus stripped this. I don't understand. I'm still trying to get the question answered. Was this just part of a negotiation, or was this something that was given to them a while back and then was taken away in some way to punish, I guess, Dan and Jake for not signing the deal? Like those guys had to take a pay cut when Dan and Jake left. Jay Reed says it was in negotiations, but since they left, those deal points were never done. Can anyone corroborate that? Or is this guy just blowing smoke? Fake Bobby Turner says not strip, more like didn't follow through with. Yeah, I mean, they didn't follow through with the deal that Dan and Jake were negotiating, right? Is that what you're saying? Like, the deal didn't get done, obviously. Dan and Jake left, so it wasn't part of the deal that they were negotiating. It's all about the podcasting and that you can still do it still and double standard, says FunJack22. D&J also paid out of pocket during COVID to support staff and bought websites. Yeah, that's true. We all did pay out of pocket during COVID, and that was something that I felt like we should not tell the company about. We all chipped in to pay because we all had to take a pay cut during COVID. Was a very uncomfortable time, and the company was worried about its viability at this point. We all listened to their argument and said, at first they all wanted us to all take time, like we all were not going to work. Everyone was going to get furloughed. And but they couldn't furlough the people who had contracts, is the way it was explained to me. So it was voluntary that we would get furloughed. And the show hosts got together. We decided, okay, we will be furloughed. We will basically take a pay cut. We'd rather have a pay cut than be furloughed, because we still wanted to be on the air. So we told the company, because you guys were going through it too. I don't know if y'all remember this now, but it was a very scary time. We got COVID, we got lockdown, we didn't know what this virus was going to be. It was an incredibly fraught time. So we said, hey, we don't think we should be off the air during this time, where when people are trying to make sense of the world in real time. This is when we feel like this is our duty to be on the air, as crazy as that sounds for a silly sports station. But this is when having familiar voices talk through situations has the most value. So we would like to be on the air. So rather than furlough us, can you at least let us just work for free for the 2 or 3 weeks or however long the furlough was? I can't remember. And all the show hosts agreed to that, and then we all pitched in and gave money to those who, you know, the furlough was going to hurt more than it would hurt us. So we chipped in on that. And we did that. And Dan and Jake did that too. We all, and if I remember correctly, Dan was the one who we all paid Dan, and then Dan distributed the money. And it was a very sweet and thoughtful thing. And I thought that, and I was of the opinion that this is a good thing to do, but we should not let the company know about it. Because I didn't want to get ourselves in the situation that the company could start learning that any time that they wanted to get money back out of the show host, they could just hold a gun to a support staff head and say, hey, you know, well, we're not, we are going to let you decide whether to pull the trigger on this person. I just felt like we should do it privately, was my take on it. And so we hell, and I think, you know, and Dan and Jake, they may have done even other stuff. That may not have been what you were talking about, the paying of the other guys during COVID. You know, they may have done other stuff too for their guys during that time. I don't know if we're talking about the same thing, but yeah, I mean that was a tough decision to make. You know, the company asking everybody for money. You know, because it's like, okay, yeah, I get that business is bad, and I don't want the thing to go bankrupt either, right? I want us to all have a company to work for. So when things are going bad and you ask for money back, just keep this in mind. So when things are going well, I want to see you guys just all of a sudden give us surprise bonuses sometime. I think that would be good too. If we're showing the good faith in giving money back and paying support staff at a time when the company is really struggling, just remember when things are going really well, maybe you guys start throwing surprise bonuses around. Someone says, I'm still confused how the Hardline was at studio every day like nothing, but every other show stayed home. I'm not sure. I don't remember that. I guess maybe because they were the only show that was going into the studio. So all the shows weren't having to share the studio. I don't know. I don't know how that worked. I think we had this idea of pods, right? Like the musers were all at the same place. So we three were exposed to each other. Dan and Jake were at the same place, so they shared the same air, and then the Hardline. So we're all three at different locations. So one of those locations was, of course, the station, and I guess the Hardline claimed that. I don't know. Jay Reed says the raises were a part of negotiations since contract for show wasn't executed, then said raises were null and void unless done another way. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Honestly, the fact that it got out is too bad for D&J, in my opinion, since an employee left and it shows they were... Okay, I see. Using confidential... I'm not sure I understand all this. Leaving... Fake Bobby Turner said Cumulus stole money from you, dude. Well, I guess I could look at it that way. Because they did get money back from all of us. But, that's where you have to. It's a delicate balancing act, right? I choose not to think I was taken advantage of. uh, COVID wasn't as bad an afternoon drive. I bet paying out of pocket went over well with your kinfolk. That's you're trying to do the best thing, the situation at hand. It wasn't an ideal position to be in for anybody. I wish everyone well. I hope that the legal case gets settled and settled soon and settled to both sides as much satisfaction as each side can get out of it. And we can all get back to the business of laughing and keeping each other company and not feel like we have to be talking about tense things all the time. Okay, everybody done? Everybody had their say? Everybody sufficiently either, I don't know whether you guys are more angry right now or we feel like we've had a good cathartic talking session. I don't know. Those are just some thoughts about the situation. It's unfortunate we're here. I understand why we're here, because we're testing law and we're going to see if these things are legal, which is going to be really interesting. It is. It's going to be really interesting to see if non-competes are at all legal. We're going to find out. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, until we do find out the conclusion of that lawsuit, give our new guys a chance. They're not making these decisions. In some way, this was you knew this is going to happen, right? We all know that people are going to try to enforce what they feel the contract says, and then people are also going to try to do what they feel like the contract will permit them to do. And then courts, when there's a disagreement, courts are the ones that decide that. And all of that has nothing to do with the guys who are still trying to put on a show every day, particularly the new guys who are trying to get their legs up under them to where they can keep you guys entertained in the middays. Give them a shot to do that. Please. We keep talking about companies as this abstract thing that we can all hate like a monster. It's very tempting to do. I know even for me, it's tempting to do that. But then I have to remember the companies are made up of people. And it's made of people. And when we're talking Mino and Monty and Sean and Donovan and Matt and the Musers and the Hardline, let's not. We're the baby with this bathwater, and I don't want to be thrown out. I'm not content just to say that there's nothing good here that can ever make you laugh ever again, and that the 1 to 3 show is the best it's ever going to be, and Donnie and Matt are as good as they're ever going to get. That's not true. They're trying to get better and do a good show and to get their sea legs up under them. So let's not shoot them because we're mad about something else. All right. The end. The end. I love you guys. Seriously, thank you for being here, and thank you for letting me ramble about all this kind of stuff. It was good to just sit here and talk it through with you guys. And I'll try to go back through the chat and see the points that you guys brought up, because I'm always willing to listen to new points and things that I haven't thought of, new angles on all this case that have not occurred to me, or that I always get a real thrill. Honestly, I really do. I love it when I find a really good bit of something that I haven't thought of before, or even if it's something that is well reasoned that I didn't think was right before, but I read some good reasoning and a good point of view, and I go, hey, you know what? I've changed my mind on this. I think that this guy's making a good point, or this girl's making a good point. This woman's making a good point. Whatever. So I'll go back and try to read and see what you guys were saying. Because one of the great things in life is that it's full of other minds. And I love watching other minds think. So, I love you guys. I'm proud of you. Thanks for staying up late with me. And it's 10:30. I've got to be on there at 5:35 in the morning right here from Choctaw Casino. So you guys tune in, and maybe I'll talk about this Twitch stream and my lovely little new friends. Good night. I love you.